Othello's Sallow is a Shakespearean tragedy and is considered one of his four most successful tragedies. The themes of the play include love, extreme betrayal, race, and revenge. Here is a detailed synopsis of the play. The story takes place in 16th century Venice and Cyprus and describes the love tragedy between the black general, Othello's cell, and the white woman, Desdemona di Rona. On a Venetian night, Rodrigo, Baderigo, and Iago make a loud noise outside the house of Desdemona's father, Branthai Nobaneo, trying to tell Brantheno that his daughter Desdemona has run for Othello's. Brantheno is furious and immediately gathers an armed force to try to stop the marriage. However, in front of the Venetian Senate, Brantheno failed to stop the marriage. Instead, he was moved by Othello's eloquence and Desdemona's firmness, and finally reluctantly accepted the marriage. At the same time, the Venetian government decided to send Othello to Cyprus to fight against the Turks. Othello, Desdemona, and Othello's aide-de-camp, Cassio then set off. With Iago as Othello's assistant, they also went with them. Iago harbored strong hostility towards Othello because Othello chose Cassio as his aide instead of him. In addition, he also suspected that Othello was having an affair with his wife, Emilia, so he decided to do everything possible to frame Othello and bring him to ruin. In Cyprus, the Turkish fleet was destroyed in a storm, and Passero and Desdemona lived a short and happy life here. However, Iago was behind a conspiracy. He first incited Rodrigo to attack Cassio, who wounded Rodrigo in self-defense. Afterwards, Iago deliberately gave wine to Cassio, causing him to clash with Montano and Montano, the nobles of Cyprus, while intoxicated. Hausero therefore relieved Cassio of his position as adjutant, and Cassio could not accept this dodgy, and asked Iago for advice on how to restore fertility. Iago suggested that Cassio intercede with Desdemona, asking him to persuade Othello to restore his position. During this time, Iago's conspiracy continued to develop. He took advantage of the accident of Desdemona's intercession for Cassio and suggested to Othello that Desdemona and Cassio were oil-stained, and Othello began to doubt Desdemona's loyalty. Iago further provoked, saying that he had heard Cassio call out the name of Desdemona in a dream, and also claimed to have seen Cassio holding the handkerchief that Desdemona gave to Othello. In fact, this handkerchief was picked up by Iago's wife, Emilia, and handed it to Iago. He put the handkerchief in Cassio's house, relying on Cero's jealousy, and his love for Desdemona turned into anger and hatred. Under Iago's shrinking gaze, he relied on Cero. Iago's abbreviation. Othello decides to kill Desdemona and Cassio, and he asks Iago to be responsible for dealing with Cassio, and himself to take on the task of killing Desdemona. Iago asks Rodrigo to kill Cassio, but after the two stab each other, Rodrigo dies, and after Cassio is injured, Iago takes the opportunity to kill Montano and frame Cassio. That same night, Othello returns to the bedroom and accuses Desdemona of strangling him. Emilia arrives at the scene and exposes Iago's crime. Iago kills Emilia during his escape, but is later arrested. Only then did Othello realize that he had been deceived by Iago, and that Desdemona was innocent. The grief-stricken Othello committed suicide with a dagger, and finally died tragically next to Desdemona's body. Othello's tragedy is largely due to Iago's conspiracy and Othello's own jealousy. Iago cleverly exploits human weaknesses to push Othello to extinction, and Othello's extreme psychology and inferiority complex make it easier for him to believe. Iago's lies. This tragedy reveals the fragility and complexity of human nature, and the devastating impact of negative emotions such as extreme betrayal and hatred on human destiny. In Othello, Shakespeare portrays the complex human nature through the characterization of the characters. How Cero, as a heroic general, appears weak and blind in the face of love. Iago is a cunning and vicious villain who exploits human weaknesses to create tragedies. In addition, the loyalty, purity, and kindness of Desdemona are also typical character traits in this work. Othello's story allows us to see the dark side of human nature, but also warns us to be wary of inner jealousy and suspicion, so as not to lead to tragic endings. Shakespeare shows his deep insight into human nature and unique insights into social and moral issues through this tragedy.
以及对社会和道德问题的独到见解。